Hello, this is Kim with Standing on Solid Ground. I am your host of this motivational and inspirational podcast. And today's book of the Bible, Exodus. Exodus is known as, or its meaning, the liberation of the people of Israel from slavery in Egypt in the 13th century BCE under the leadership of Moses. And we all know that Exodus is the second book of the Bible. Now, if you wanted to know a little bit more, which I did, I studied what is the 13th century. And the 13th century is the years of 1300 to 1201 BC. And if you recall, sometimes their numbers are in reverse. And as I was studying this and reading upon this is before Christ, as we all have known, because AD is after death. But Exodus is the liberation, meaning the separation or the freedom of being from under the ruling of Pharaoh in Egypt, to be free or to be exonerated from the slavery that they have found themselves in for such a long period of time. And God had appointed Moses as that one or that individual to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt to the appointed places where God had promised that He will take care of and keep His children. If we think about it, we all are needing to be separated from something that's keeping us in bondage. And if you think about, the Israelites were in bondage. They were mistreated. They were being dogged out, or they were starved. They were killed. If they were grown too old, it's like if you can't keep up with everyone, then it's time for you to go. And they will work them until they literally died. And we all have to have that point in our lives where we need to exit something. And that's what Exodus to me seems like. To exit out of bondage, to exit out of harm's way, and to be free from under that burden that has been weighing us down and dragging us out and keeping us from being happy, keeping us from being all that God wants us to be. Now, I often ask myself, once the children of Israel were released from the hand of Pharaoh, and if they had continued to follow God without any sins, would there have been the Ten Commandments? Think about it. Would the Ten Commandments have ever been created if they did not sin against God? But then you have to go back a little further and ask yourself, if Adam and Eve had not eaten of that tree of the knowledge of good and evil, would evil have ever been a part of our world? These are interesting questions. Hypothetical, of course, because we know that we are surrounded with sin. And when God takes us out of bondage, the one thing that I noticed that many of us have done at one point in time in our lives, including myself, we get ourselves back into bondage. That when God gets us out and release us from that yoke that Satan has placed upon our necks, instead of staying out of trouble, we find ourselves back in trouble, and worse than it was the time before. And we ask ourselves, once we're in this trouble, we're praying out to God and we're asking God to get us out. But sometimes God tarries a little longer than normal. He'll take a little longer, whereas you may have been able to get out of that bondage the first time in less than a few months. And then the second time you may have gotten yourself in trouble, it may have been a year or two. But when it takes a little bit longer, God is trying to teach you something, to humble yourself, to submit yourself. And this is what the children of Israel have found themselves doing at many different occasions, because when they sinned against God, things went bad. And a lot of times we don't make that connection. When things are going well in our lives and things are at peace in our life, let's keep on that straight and narrow path. I'm not saying that bad things don't happen, but with the relationship that we have with God, we should be able to get through it a little easier because we haven't sinned. Look at Job. Job was up straight and upright and holy before God. And look at all the devastations that he went through. That was a yoke that Satan had put on his neck. He had to find his, liberation. He had to find his exit. He had to find that point in his life where he can be broken from that bondage that Satan had placed upon his neck. Now, he had to suffer a little while, but God did bless him. Because the one thing that Satan said was, he's going to curse you and die. He didn't say anything else about his attitude or his demeanor or his deception, his receptiveness of the situation, and to become deceptive in a way where he wanted to denounce himself. He wished himself to be dead. He wished that he had never been born. And we, at some time or another in our lives, we wonder why we go through these things in our life. That if things was going to be this difficult for our life, what was the purpose of living? There's a reason. God wants to bless you. But in order to bless you, he has to get you through the rough terrain before he can get you to the land of paradise. And sometimes it's going to be rough. And it's going to be harder than you ever imagined in your life. Just like the children of Israel found out. They complained to Moses, talking about, you brought us all out of Egypt. Why'd you bring us out here? You brought us out here to die. No, he did not bring you out there to die. He got you out so you can have something better. But in order for you to have something better, you got to go through some tough times and some tough terrains to get to that promised land. God could give us everything that we want and just hand it to us. But what kind of faith, what kind of hope, what kind of peace, what kind of joy will we really have? We'll be spoiled brats because God would just give it to us and we never learned anything. That when troubles come, we start belly aching. We start complaining. The reasons why this is important to me to explain these is because it is very relevant to our lives today. We may not think it's relevant to our lives, but it is. It's very relevant because we don't know just how close in ties that we have with these individuals of the Bible. Slavery is not anything new. It's not anything new. It has been around for quite some time. However, God is the one that has the ruling hand. He's the one that can get us through anything that we need to get through, no matter how difficult it may seem. So the Bible of today, or the Bible book that I'm using, is Exodus. Exodus is the liberation of people, meaning that it is their way of, God's way of getting us through whatever storms we're going through and getting us from under the hand of Satan, that he can direct our path and lead our path. But don't do like the children of Israel have done and go and start sinning when things go well. When things are going well, I keep praying. I keep praising God because I don't know when Satan is going to strike again. And I have to be ready. I have to be prayed up. And this is what the children of Israel did not do. They did not prepare themselves. That when famine came, when, the food dried up and, their children and their family members was dying off and pestilence had come, they did not realize all that they had to go through. But whenever you push God to the back burner, you don't get the fullness of his blessings. We want to be moved out of that bondage. We want to be blessed. And sometimes we got to go through some hard times to be blessed. But don't cry about it. Don't complain about it. Just get through it. Praise your way through it. Because the more you praise your way through it, the more God is going to bless you. This is Kim with Standing on Solid Ground. You have yourself a wonderful and blessed day.